Good afternoon and welcome to this webinar brought to you by Construction Management and BIM Plus. This session is entitled The New Approach to Information Management in association with IdeaGen Mail Manager. Our programme today. We're here to learn about the Information Management Initiative, or IMI. It builds upon the pioneering BIM mandate of 2016 and the current information management mandate contained in the Transforming Infrastructure Performance Roadmap to 2030. Representatives from nima have developed the IMI, can't even say it, can I, launched earlier this month to ensure it is relevant across the whole built and managed environment, both now and for the future. The aim is to make the information management message less ambiguous, more achievable and beneficial for everyone. Second half of the webinar will focus on an often neglected part of information management, email management. There'll be a Q&A session at the end. Let me briefly introduce our speakers. First up will be Chris Lees, CEO of DataClan and a nima ambassador. He'll be coming to us live from a London exhibition. And Hugh Knipe, Senior Client Manager at IdeaGen Mail Manager. I'm Justin Stanton, Editor of BIM Plus. I'm your chair this afternoon. Some housekeeping. For those of you who haven't done our webinars before, please use the Q&A function, not the chat function. Please use the Q&A function to ask questions of the speakers. You can pose those questions as yourself or anonymously. Our panelists will address your questions in the Q&A session at the end. This webinar is being recorded and will be available on Watch on Demand via the original registration link, probably tomorrow morning. There is 1 hour's CPD credit for those who complete this webinar live. CPD certificates will be issued tomorrow. You can only qualify for a CPD credit if you are watching via your own registration link. So that's enough of that. Let's crack on. So I will be sharing Chris's slides for him. So Chris, if you want to open up your mic, etc., and just give me a second while I get your slides up. Which are those ones.
Just as you're doing that, Justin, good afternoon, everyone. As Justin said, I am at London Build, which is very noisy around me, even if it doesn't sound so noisy thanks to the noise cancelling. I may turn my video off if the reception signal is not strong enough, so Justin's going to keep me right. So if you see my video disappear, do not panic. It's just in the interests of you being able to hear what I'm saying.
There we go. Right, I think we are ready to roll.
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Justin. So as Justin said, my name is Chris Lees. I have been working on the information management mandate, as it is now called, with nima for just over a year. And so I'm going to take the next 15 to 20 minutes just to hopefully give you a quick run through of what we've done and what it is and why it matters. So I think it's always important to start with the why it matters. So Justin, if we can go on maybe a couple of slides actually to slide 3 and start looking at why information management is important. So one of the things that we recognize at nima is that we are all information managers. This is not somebody else's job, it is all of our jobs. And that improving our sector's productivity is also paramount. And that can't be done without effective information management. And increasingly, the sector needs the right quality data at the right time, and it needs to be trusted. I've advised the government on the Building Safety Act, and it's extremely clear in that, and in fact, that at the heart of the Building Safety Act is the golden thread, which really calls out the importance of this trusted data at the right time, but also the maintenance of that data right the way through the life cycle of the built assets. And, you know, why is it needed? Well, because we are seeing some examples of good practice, and the benefits are easily demonstrable in those examples. But as a sector, we've really not made the progress that we should have done. Continuing on the next slide, we have recognized that digital information is central now in the built environment. That is massive progress over the last 10 to 20 years for sure. But we still have a massive problem when it comes to sharing that data and avoiding building silos. So again, information management that allows us to create a universal environment where information about the built environment can seamlessly flow through the supply chain and also be accessible to the stakeholders that use it, including really critically the people that use these elements of the built environment, the buildings themselves, whether they're residents living in residential blocks, for example, or commercial office users or users of infrastructure. All of them have a stake in this journey. It is not just something that is insular to the construction supply chain. And we have also renamed this. We started off the journey a long time ago with the BIM mandate, and we've really migrated from BIM to IM, if you like, information management. And that is partly because this is so much more than just what's within the scope of a building information model. It is including a lot of other important concepts. So this is, yes, this is ISO 19650, but also really how that into a much wider picture as well. So let's just look a little bit about the context in which this was created. So on the next slide, as I mentioned, there was a BIM level 2 mandate back in 2016 from the government, mostly affected the public sector, of course. And that mandate has had somewhat, I would say, mixed reviews. Not everybody is a huge fan of the mandate. And I'd say that part of the problem there was that even the clients who were mandating it didn't necessarily quite understand enough about how to take advantage of what they're asking for. And that's never a great situation, of course. But the need for some kind of mandate is really important. And the Transforming Infrastructure Performance Roadmap 2030 has reasserted the need for some mandate. It refers to the information management mandate within that roadmap, and it's also in the construction playbook. It is quite good. It would not surprise me if, even if you're familiar with those documents, you haven't actually found the information management mandate reference. But we were tasked by the Construction Leadership Council at nima to look at how we could really refresh that information management mandate and make it a little bit more fit for purpose, bring it up to date. So on the next slide, we started thinking about what the problem really was that we were trying to solve and how we were proposing to go about it. And there were several issues that we were trying to challenge. Firstly, you have to do this. And that level of uncertainty did not help with adoption. It also only focused on information. And what we've discovered is a lot of people have taken information to mean different things. And we needed to really call out the fact that we are talking about data here, not just PDFs, for example. And it was quite focused. It didn't really cover the operational phase of the development environment, which of course is really, really important because most of the time is in the operational phase. Hopefully, otherwise it's not been a very good delivery phase. And nobody could really quite understand what the benefits of the mandate were. So as I mentioned, that was partly because some people who were asking for it didn't quite understand themselves why they had to ask for it and what they were supposed to do with the results. But that all really led or stemmed from the fact that it was not designed with the user in mind in a way. It was not very tailored to the different stakeholders, and it was certainly quite complex and confusing. And it's also not that far down the line. I mean, this is only 8 years ago, which I'm sure many. So what did we think we'd do about that? Well, we got together and we decided that an information management initiative might be the right outcome here. We changed the mandate to initiative because we realized that mandate had overtones that were just not really helpful, like it was going to be forced on people, and also like there was actually somebody mandating it. Whereas this is really much more about creating a vision for the future and then enabling that vision with targeted and useful information and frameworks on how you can do it. And one of the really key differences from the previous work is that this is now firstly aimed at organization level adoption, not project level adoption, which previously the BIM mandate really was, because it was focused on an instruction. So it's organization level, but also it's very much focused on ensuring that we can support in a really targeted way stakeholders so that it's simpler. So organization level and simpler are two of the really key elements of the information management mandates. And you can see on the right here the vision statement that we've come up with, which is very much around this digital integration dimension across the whole life cycle and benefiting really all of the stakeholders, not fine-tuned to one or two. So in terms of timeline, on the next slide, you can see that we've been through phase one, which finished really just a few weeks ago, 7th of November, when this was launched. And during that phase, we had a task group, which I was a part of, and we met every 2 weeks. We also had a lot of stakeholder engagement with a range of stakeholders. And we had a steering group that kept us on the right track and reviewed how we're going on. We're supported by a great PMO team. And that's led to the launch of the Information Management Initiative at the NIMA conference, as I say, on November the 7th. But in many ways, that is the end of the beginning. I don't want to go all Churchillian on you, but that's the end of the beginning. We now have the real work to do. So having launched the initiative, we're now all about a phase of two, I guess, key things. One is communicating. So this is part of that, making sure people understand what has been done. But the other is evolving the supporting framework and tools to make this, as we promised, easier to adopt. Excuse me. So if we look at the next slide, the refreshed approach to the Information Management Initiative absolutely is built off work that's already been done, but it's been done in a way that enables future innovation. And that's really critical. We recognize there's going to be a lot of changes over the next 5 years, certainly, and beyond that even. We can see changes coming down the line that will demand different kinds of information management, and we need to be ready for that. And as you'll see in a moment, we've structured this as a sector-wide engagement, a call for action, but the actual action itself is organization level, as I mentioned a moment ago. So what we're really asking is for that organizational decision-making to be made. And actually, that's where the mandate becomes relevant again. So the organization can mandate it within their boundaries. And we feel that's a much more effective approach than a project by project, where what ended up happening was every project was, of course, really different and its own information management world. We are looking at developing the existing ecosystem. So there's a framework underpinning this, which is the UK BIM framework, which I'm sure a lot of you will be aware of. The UK interpretation, if you like, of ISO 19650. But we know that that's not good enough on its own. It's not good enough because it's not actually accessible enough to all stakeholders. But also, it will need to evolve over the coming years. It's perfectly great at the moment, and it's what you should be looking at in terms of the detailed framework and guidance. But we know we've got more work to do to make that better and easier. And what we've also done is introduced the concept of some principles and rules that make it easier for an organization to take this work and mandate it and understand what that really means for them. So we've kind of summarized that on the next slide. Excuse me, where we see this three-level approach, as I mentioned, the sector-level directive, where we've set out some overarching principles and a route map. Then comes the organization level mandate. As I say, that's where an organization takes the decision for itself to adopt the information management initiative, to pursue it with its operating practices and procedures, and to support and share its experience so that it can help everybody be better at information management. And then the detailed framework. So that's where we get into what each of the specific roles are and what they need to know, specific rules for different roles, and of course the supporting standards and guidance that help people be consistent in the way they manage information. And there's, as I say, more work to do there, but there's a huge amount already done of excellent quality work. So if we look at that in terms of the steps across from the call for action, we'd expect that the call for action, what we're seeing at the moment is a kind of onboarding process. So organizations coming on board, becoming sponsors or supporters of the initiative, and just starting to wrap their heads around, if you like, what these principles are. And the principles are, you know, these are not necessarily very new. They're certainly not rocket science. They're all really about being committed to the implementation of the framework specified by the initiative, recognizing why you would do it and being able to articulate the benefits, and also recognizing why certain key aspects of information management are important. So things like understanding the purpose of the information you have, understanding where it's stored, and understanding who has access to it, those kinds of things. So really that onboarding stage is, as an organization, you want to go for this, of course, you need to plan and mobilize. And what we're really providing there is a whole bunch of resources to help different stakeholders understand what their role in that mobilization can be. And then at the organization level, we've been preparing this set of 4 overarching rules. You can see these in the documents. They're just kind of little screenshots here that give top level rules. But what we haven't developed yet, but we will be developing is, or what we've developed some of, is the much more specific rules, role by role, over the coming weeks and months. And those are in this right-hand column. And that's where we'll also get into the detail of the specific implementation frameworks. As I say, at the moment, that is very much the UK BIM framework. Now, I did mention one of our goals here was to try and simplify things. And so on the next slide, one of the things we've done is try to call out and recognize and acknowledge all of these different personas and their role and stake, and indeed what they're actually interested in and care about when it comes to information management. The little diagram on the right is intended to show that these all fall into 3 broad categories. So the supporters here are organizations that predominantly produce information. So think manufacturers, for example, with product data sheets. At the bottom, these gatekeepers are largely the consumers of that information. So there, think about insurers or regulators. They take information, they don't necessarily provide a lot of information back in. And then you've got all of these parties in between who both produce and use information. They're responsible for managing it, curating it. They are the custodians of all of this information. But there's lots and lots of different personas that we considered, and that, you know, some, not even all of them, I don't think, are listed here on the left. Just to give you a sense of all of the different views that were heard by the task group in preparation of the information management initiative. So everybody listening here can recognize, you know, which of those persona groups you might fit into. As I say, there are 1 or 2 that are not on there. For example, you might have the occupiers of an office building, the users of transport infrastructure. We've got general public, I suppose, which sort of addresses that, but I would argue even that breaks down into different personas. Information for a resident in a high-rise block is going to be quite different in nature, both in terms of the nature of the information and the way in which it's shared, than information that you might be sharing with a facility management team that's occupying a floor of a commercial office building. So this targeting is a really key part of the initiative, and something that we think is another key differentiator. It's our hope to try and make things simple. So on the next slide, we have a summary of the benefits. A lot of this, I think, hopefully based on what I've said, will be relatively obvious. But this seamless sharing of data throughout the built environment and its users as a principle is really important. Analysis at the bottom that shows that the business case, well, when this is done effectively, the business case is extremely strong. So just to wrap up, really, we on the next slide we launched, as I mentioned, on the 7th of November at the NIMA virtual conference, and we've had a number of engagement events since. The ones listed here are still to come. It's the reason I'm here at London Build today. Is we had a session this morning, very well attended, some really great questions and engagement, lots of conversations around things like circular economy and how it helps with that, how it helps with the gateways and the new requirements that have come about as a consequence of the Building Safety Act. But lots of engagement. So please help us spread the word. It's very important to us that people start to at least understand that this is there and start to engage with it using the links that Justin provided. And just to finish off, the next final slide is talking a little bit about what's next. So we've very much pushed the groundwork, but now there's 5 main areas of work that need to continue. So from the framework perspective, we need to make sure the framework is fit for purpose, still work to be done there, and also make sure that we've got easy ways of monitoring and ensuring compliance with benefits. So we're looking at some tooling for that, some ways of measuring where you are on the roadmap, how you get to the next level on the roadmap. We are looking towards some form of government mandate eventually, although that may be a little bit further down the line. You can see the gold star there at the end of phase 3. We're right at the beginning of phase 2 on this diagram, so let's keep it realistic. And of course, we desperately need funding and sponsorship to allow this work to continue. So, if you're an organization that can help with that, please get in touch. There are sponsorship opportunities. You can sponsor with money, you can sponsor with time and resources and expertise. There's lots of ways you can support this work. And of course, the future development of the information initiative itself and pilot programs that allow us to demonstrate its effectiveness. So I think that's probably as much as I can say. As I say, very much happy to take any questions later in this webinar, or of course, please get in touch afterwards. Very happy for that. So, Justin.
Chris, thank you very much. Apologies to the audience. There was a tiny bit of sound breakup here and there, but I think we got the gist of what Chris was saying. So thank you, Chris. Yep. And Hugh, if you're ready to share your screen and open your camera and mic, it'll be over to you.
Great, thanks, Justin. I'll just share my screen now. So hopefully everybody can now see that, and thank you, Justin and Chris. Even though, as Justin mentioned, there's a few breakups, I kind of definitely heard everything, and it was kind of really insightful for me to learn about the direction where we're going. So as mentioned earlier, my name is Hugh Knipe, and I work with businesses globally to help them unify their project information. So to start off with my presentation, we just kind of want to outline that, we understand that the technology landscape globally is changing at an ever increasing speed, and that is no different within the AEC industries. I'm sure that you noticed in your own work, technology is continuing to rapidly evolve and drive the AEC to become safer, cheaper, and quicker. Today, there are numerous examples of how new technology is revolutionizing the sector, including using AI, virtual reality, and BIM. It's also no surprise that with everything going on in the world right now, and teams either working remotely or in a hybrid working environment, that it's becoming more and more difficult to access project information. AEC professionals like yourselves rely on strong, consistent communication. This might take the form of pitches, winning clients, and day-to-day communication with your colleagues. The days are gone, or at least limited, where you can turn around to the desk next to you and ask your colleague to help you find an email, for example. What this means for a lot of people is that they don't have access to the information they need, and they are left out of the communication loop. As you can imagine, this is a huge problem. Over 347 billion emails were sent and received daily in 2023, making email the world's most used communication and collaboration tool. It is also then ironic that it's the one thing that most people manage differently, which creates huge risks going into the future. One of these risks comes in the form of project rework. A recent study found that 80% of project professionals spend half of their time on rework, meaning that poor communication can cost $62 million every year on average. Rework doesn't just waste your time and money, but can cause huge communication breakdowns within your team and with your senior executives and stakeholders. So here at Mail Manager, we run an annual survey called the State of AEC Project Management Research Report, which aims to discover the project management and collaboration challenges faced by companies globally. Our 2023 report surveyed 550 AEC leaders and explores how firms manage their project information, where they store it, and how they go about retrieving data when facing legal disputes. It also provides insight into how the industry has been affected by the current global economy, such as the cost of living crisis, supply chain issues, and the latest building regs. So let's jump into the main findings of the report. Firstly, the majority of firms have stated that they cannot easily access their project information. We found that actually 90% of respondents were concerned about the accessibility and visibility of their project information. And over a quarter of organizations say that they are at risk, especially when staff leave the business. The research found that firms are aware of the importance of filing emails as part of the offboarding process in comparison to previous years, but 28% still do not require emails to be filed, and therefore it becomes very difficult to retrieve. Unsurprisingly, disputes are continuing to rise year on year. In our previous 2021 report, 63% of respondents experienced some sort of dispute. And 2022, that number rose to 91%, so a huge increase. And with regards to the reasons of these disputes, project scope changes and payment issues are the key causes, largely because project details are often buried in emails and different documents. And finally, as I mentioned in the last slide, email is still the most used communication and collaboration tool in the industry. So in the current economic climate even, we're seeing trends in the AEC where costs are on the rise, margins are tighter than ever, and there are large staff cutbacks. Even within the larger, more established global firms, they're reporting huge drop-offs in profit as their staff costs are increasing. And unfortunately, more companies are going into administration than ever. So with so much uncertainty and so many people leaving businesses, there is a huge need for organizations to start thinking about their information management. If we look at some of the stats on screen, considering 28% of businesses do not have email filing as part of their offboarding processes, and 81% of firms use email for the majority of project correspondence, thousands of firms are still at great risk of losing information. And for 88% of people we surveyed, their overall volume of email has continued to increase in the last year, with the contents of these emails becoming more important than ever, with 11% of people claiming they are now business critical. And on top of this, almost 2/3 of AEC businesses regularly need to retrieve emails from past projects. For many firms, emails and keeping them well organized and accessible is not often a consideration until things go wrong. And at the end of the day, they hold vital information that could mean the difference between winning and losing a dispute, so it needs to be taken more seriously. Our research also uncovered that only 9% of people surveyed had not experienced a dispute in 2023. For everyone that had, the top two causes were issues related to project scope changes and chasing payments, as I highlighted previously. And these are gaining momentum. Why? Because 85% of project information relating to scope changes are being stored in emails and formal documents. To break this down further, 12% of project scope changes do not reside on a digital space at all. And shockingly, 11% of respondents highlighted that the only place that they are kept is in the project manager's head. With findings like these, it's hardly surprising that 90% of businesses are concerned about their project information not being readily available or accessible. So we are consistently seeing that failing to make email visible and accessible to project teams can cause issues that result in a legal dispute. According to Arcadis' 2022 Global Construction Disputes Report, the average global value of disputes was $52.6 million US, with an average length of just over 15 months. Firms cannot afford to let information like email correspondence slip through the cracks. And we've seen this leaky bucket of email negatively affecting AEC firms globally recently. Firms must be aware of their corporate history and be able to prove everything that's happened on their projects. Given the nature of the industry that you operate in, firms need to guarantee information visibility and accessibility to ensure they are making the right decisions. In the best cases, poor information management can cost firms money, but in the worst, it makes people unsafe. Given the size of the global disputes environment, the cost of mismanaging email is immense. How firms currently struggle with their email includes information being locked away in individuals' inboxes, staff wasting time looking for the information they need to do their job, and staff leaving the business or going on holiday, but a range of important information is trapped in their inbox. With proper email management processes in place, businesses can ensure that all project information and correspondence is captured and accessible by entire project teams. This will reduce the risk of rework and stop project disputes in their track. Plus, you'll have this information to hand years down the line should a liability dispute arise. So this has just been a quick overview of our State of the AEC report, and we'll send out the full report in the next few days if you're interested to read it in more detail. So what does this mean for information management, and how can it help you avoid disputes going forward? Luckily for us, technology advancements are continuing to improve how we work. For example, BIM advancements mean that team members can all be on the same page. It's improving safety across the industry and providing deep insights into existing buildings as well. So while all the new technology and standards like ISO 19650 are making our lives easier and really boosting the industry, we have access to a massive amount of data, both inside and outside of our organizations, that make information management difficult. This sensitive and often confidential information is typically stored in documents and correspondence, and it can often be quite inaccessible, stored in disparate applications by various departments or even different offices. Information is the lifeblood of all project work, but only if it's well organized, accessible, secure, and updated. And this is no easy task. But what is the solution? As we were hearing about before, you need a single place where all your project and client information is stored so you can see the complete picture of any given project you're working on. This single source of truth, or the golden thread of information, is a concept based around bringing all information together, ensuring everyone in an organization has access to everything they need before making any business decisions. It provides better working methods and encourages more transparent communication. This is helping organizations drive change faster without compromising quality, and it ensures that all project and client teams have access to the correct information they need when they need it. Managing project information in one place is critical to avoiding disputes, and when done right, allows teams to use their time, resources, and knowledge to make the right decisions at the right time. The two easiest ways to create a single source of truth are by removing manual processes of information sharing and increasing general information visibility across the board. But one thing to keep in mind is that if your single source of truth is not fully complete, it's not the truth. What we've seen in our research report is that while firms are stringent about how their documents and contracts are managed, email is the one thing that everyone manages differently. Without the right tools and automation in place, project teams are left to their own devices. Some people will move emails into Outlook folders, some save important information to their individual desktops, and others simply delete information if they don't see a need for it any longer. In all these scenarios, that information is trapped in silos and inaccessible to the wider project team. Losing access to essential emails or not including them in your overall information management strategy can prove massively detrimental to firms. When emails are managed correctly, it provides a much better way of working, encourages more transparent communication, and all team members have access to what they need. Plus, it removes the responsibility of storing and managing data from one person or a single department. And these are some of the common email headaches we often hear. And I'm sure people have either said these things or had people say them to them. People chasing them or asking, "This isn't what we agreed." having to ask the client, when did you tell us this? Or simply saying that someone has left the business and I'm having to come to this bit cold. Can you give me a refresher on it? Some of the benefits of centralizing your information can include your data becoming more discoverable, kind of removing the human element and removing that human error through automating your workflows. You can reduce the amount of time wasted on searching for and recreating lost documents. And as we heard about earlier, it allows you to comply with the latest regulatory and legal requirements. So who am I and why am I talking to you all today? So I'm sure everyone on this call has heard of or even worked with Arup at one point. For those who haven't, Arup are a global consultancy firm who have worked on and designed projects such as the Sydney Opera House, the Queen's Ferry Crossing in Edinburgh, and more recently the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. So Arup built Mail Manager around 20 years ago. The reason being that they had no control over how their staff were managing their emails. Yes, there were processes in place, public folders, project email addresses, manually drag and dropping to the server, but all these processes relied on the individual to remember to do it, and of course decide on what is and what isn't important, which, as you can imagine, didn't always happen. So two of the key issues were, firstly, that project teams didn't have up-to-date information on their projects, especially if they were new on a project or someone else had left. Another big issue was risk, as Arup had to retain data for up to 14 years after a project had finished in case of any claims or litigation. There was always a chance that someone would be able to find the critical data, but it would be hugely time-consuming to do so. So Arup wanted to find a system that would allow project teams to search across all their projects in a few clicks. But we also had to take away the time spent filing, and most importantly, the reliance on staff to remember to file. If staff had to start dragging and dropping or tagging emails again, it just wouldn't work. They needed something they could turn on overnight that would start learning their behaviors and would mean they wouldn't have to discuss email management ever again. They couldn't find anything that let them do so, so given the size of their IT team, they decided to write their own system. And when we regularly speak to our customers about their email management processes, we tend to hear a few kind of key benefits that they've highlighted for us. For Gensler, the key benefits of using Mail Manager are they were able to save 5 hours per week per person by removing the elements of administrative printing, file coding, and hard copy filing. And we enabled them to comply with many quality assurance and statutory standards. Ramble noted that Mail Manager means that important project information is now accessible by the wider team, even when people are on holiday or leave the business. They are confident in the fact that they will have access to all the information years down the line, and it is now less time intensive to file emails. So staff can focus on the value adding work that critically they enjoy more. With Mail Manager, Ramble have saved approximately 3 hours per week, especially for project members and managers, and improved efficiency and productivity across all its projects. The WSP, better email management processes mean that they have been able to retrieve project information in seconds. They find greater business efficiency as they can spend more time on real work. And not even taking that into account, they have greater visibility by ensuring they're capturing both sides of all email conversations. All these customer stories you've heard today tie back to the 4 key issues we hear from businesses we talk to that are ultimately the reasons they want to purchase Mail Manager. Firstly, they are concerned about the consequences they may face if they were to lose any project information or correspondence. Secondly, their teams spend countless hours every week searching for information contained in emails, or they're wasting time on admin, like manually filing those emails away. They're also concerned about that they may lack the control of the communication that is coming into and leaving the business. And finally, when information is trapped in individuals' inboxes, it effectively makes it unusable. So with Mail Manager, we give our customers confidence that any email that has been filed can be retrieved in seconds, meaning instantly increasing your productivity. And this also kind of creates that one central space for all your project information, helping you create and maintain that single source of truth going forward. So what I'll do now is I'll quickly jump into my inbox and I'll give you a short demonstration as to how the system works. So what you have with Mail Manager is you have the ability to file your emails away, and also it comes with a search functionality on the back end. So in terms of how our filing works, once I open up an email and I've read it, I've actioned it completely as I need to, I'll close it down, and then a prompt comes up. And this prompt is how we help ensure that emails do get filed to that central location. Our system learns your behaviors, learns the patterns of where you're filing your information to, so it makes suggestions based off of that. So it's picked out the relevant folder I need to file into. So rather than having to think about where it needs to file, go and finding that destination, dragging and dropping, potentially renaming the file, that's all been reduced down to now just one additional click to click file. And that files that email, firstly, neatly and tidily within my own inbox against one of these project folders, but critically against the project folder centrally, creating and maintaining that key space where all the information is held. What we can do, if there is interest in the system going forward, we can kind of do a more in-depth demonstration if there is more interest going forward. But yeah, I really appreciate your time, and yeah, excited to kind of go through the questions.
Hugh, thank you very much. That was great. So, as you say, so Chris, if you can switch your camera and mic back on, and we will jump into the Q&A. Okay. So, let's go in with a biggie, Chris. Are you seeing any good examples of the golden thread being put into practice? Perhaps more of a reference to your day job.
Yeah, maybe my favorite question of all. And I'm absolutely delighted to say, yes, I am. I'm absolutely devastated to say nowhere near as many as I would like to see, given where we are in the progression of the Act. I have seen firsthand, I've been involved in 2 implementations and essentially common data environments to support the golden thread in client side. And that's been for me the big missing piece. As I say, I was saying just this morning, the Building Safety Act is designed to fundamentally save lives, and users of buildings don't die while they're being built. There are sometimes tragic construction accidents, but for the most part, the tragedies like Summer London, Grenfell, these happen after the building's finished. So that operational phase, getting the owners and operators on board, getting them involved in this conversation has been a critical piece of progress we've made, I think, in the IMI. And I'm really delighted that two of the clients I mentioned are actually large providers of social housing. So the very same kind of housing that Grenfell was. And the benefits are amazing as well. This is not just about delivering safe buildings, but that implementation, and I've said this over and over again, I've seen a lot of silo implementations of the Building Safety Act, and for me that's just wrong. This is about doing information management better, one consequence of which is that you comply with the Building Safety Act. And the 2 cases I'm referencing here have both taken that more holistic view and addressed their information and data management across the board, not just for building safety. And the benefits they're seeing are financial, speed, customer satisfaction. And in fact, I'm talking to one of them at the moment about publishing a series of case studies on what they've done to make it a bit more accessible. And I think, Justin, actually, one of them is already talking to you about doing just that. You may well know who I'm referencing.
Indeed. Excellent. Okay. So another one for you, Chris. Will the Information Management Initiative deliver where the previous BIM and IM mandates have not succeeded?
Great question. I sadly cannot tell the future, but I think there's several things that are fundamentally different, and I think things have to be fundamentally different. But as I mentioned, the 2 big ones for me are focusing on organizations, not projects, and simplifying. I think those are the 2 changes that, for me, and from what I see, are going to make the biggest difference to adoption and success. but is it going to succeed? Well, I hope so. We need to do something. If this isn't it, then, you know, I don't want to be here in another 2 years talking about whatever the next effort is. I hope people will get behind this and help us make it work. You know, nothing's ever perfect, but the need is clear.
Yeah. Two possibly interlinked questions, and maybe I'll take the second one first. Someone asks, am I right in thinking that the IMI vision is that most people don't need to know everything about information management? They simply need to know the bits of the UK BIM framework that are relevant to them.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Whoever asked that is right on the money in my mind. I think I go even further. The goal is that most people actually don't need to know anything explicitly about information management. It is just part of their normal day job. Just like we don't talk about anymore, we don't talk about training people to use a mobile phone. Now, I'm old enough to remember when that kind of training was done, right? Now, this is just something you do. And the phone is simple enough that pretty much everybody can do that. Well, information management should be like that for most people too. One of the examples I was using this morning is the builder that did my extension at home. One guy, 3 laborers, like he should be doing information management, but he's not going to be really aware of that. It's just going to save him time every Sunday night when he sat down trying to bill all of his clients for all the materials he's used and the time. But it's that, you know, that's a nightmare for him right now. And it's a nightmare because guess what? The supply chain, all of these local builders merchants are not giving him the information in a way that he can use it. He doesn't need to read 19650, but he does need to be a beneficiary of the work.
Yeah. And the presentation includes the statement, this is the related question, we are, I suppose it's, we are all information managers, I suspect it's referring to. As digital adoption increases and the golden thread really kicks in, will we see the end of digital teams within construction businesses because everyone in a construction business will have a level of IM awareness or skills?
That's a great question, and that's one I've not been asked before. So also kudos for somebody coming up with a novel question at this late in the day. So my honest answer is I don't know. I think the implication of the question is right, that there's going to be a level of sophistication and automation and just business as usual about information management. That means a lot of what digital teams do today should not be required. But we're just starting to scratch the surface of really what digitally enabling these industries means. And so it would not surprise me at all if the digital teams don't actually just move on to some higher level benefit cases than some of the just real, you know, housekeeping table stake stuff that they are buried under today because everybody's doing it so differently.
Yeah. Okay. Some questions for Hugh. Does Mail Manager, quote unquote, read documents attached to an email?
So Mail Manager would recognize that there's an attachment part of the email, and we obviously want to keep the email in its native format. So when it's filed to wherever you're filing it to, the document will be part of that MSG file on your server, SharePoint, your central storage.
How does Mail Manager manage permissions and confidential emails and attachments?
Yeah, really good question. So there's no security settings within our system. We just directly mirror the security settings of your tool. So if you have access to a folder, you can file and search through it. If you don't have access, you can't see anything that you shouldn't be able to see.
Okay. And can a document be found within an email based on the name of the drawing, for example, as if they've been sort of searching for the name of the drawing, its title or whatever?
Yeah, so our search allows you to filter on emails that have attachments, and then you can search for the attachment name as well to kind of find whatever document email you need to.
And also a word search term within a Word document or similar?
So you can search through the subject line of the email, the body of the email, all through our search as well.
Yeah. Okay, that's good on. Okay. And crucial question, I guess. Does it only work on live emails post installation, or can you feed historic emails into Mail Manager?
Yeah, we would definitely encourage you to upload as many historic emails as you can into our system so that you can truly benefit from the speed and power of our search functionality and make that all discoverable and properly filed as well historically.
Okay, all right. Let's jump back to Chris. Chris, Martin Gooch asks, or notes that you mentioned that the initiative has statutory backing. Can you expand on this, please? Oh, I think you might be on mute, Chris. You might have muted yourself. If you can unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry,
and then,
it's like being in a disco here. No idea how much of this you can hear. But yeah, so I may have misled Martin somewhat. It doesn't have statutory backing today. It is our goal that it will have government backing of some type. I doubt whether that will be legislation. It's much more likely to appear in guidance from the government perspective. What it does have, though, is that the alignment and the demand for the work came from the Transforming Infrastructure Performance program, which is, of course, government-led. And it was the Department for Business and Trade working with the Construction Leadership Council that initiated the project. So it has, I don't know whether you would call that, it's certainly not statutory, but in terms of government backing, there's definitely a lot of support for this work from government.
Yeah.
Parts of government, at least.
Yeah. Okay. And someone else notes, keep it simple, stupid. Will any ensuing reviews of the UK BIM framework and the 19650 standards embrace a simpler approach, as you appear to be doing with the new IM initiative?
I think inevitably the answer to that is yes. I mean, do I know of any such amendments to the 19650 going on right now? No, there has just been a review of it done, and it will be updated accordingly. But nima are very much engaged. In fact, I chair a project called Indigo, which is looking at the slightly further future of information management. And in that, we're definitely looking at how we can let the machines do a lot more of the work, make it much more simple and easy for the people, and allow us to really get on with the stuff where we add value. So I think the answer to the question is yes, even though it's a bit too early to be.
Yeah. Okay. Jumping back to that statutory question, if I can just throw in a question and / observation from myself from the conversations we've had and what I've read about the Information Management Initiative. So the idea that as well as when you talk about organization level, organizations effectively actually mandating it within their own operations to their own staff. My understanding was that organization also meant, in that sense, the professional institutions, the professions themselves. So the likes of CIOB, REBA, RICS, there would be just discussions with them for them to mandate to their members, so the members to maintain their chartered membership would need to follow the principles.
And yeah, I think that's exactly right. And yeah, and I would hope to see that being brought forward by the more progressive of those organizations. I'm very aware that some of the organizations you mentioned have a lot of legacy to deal with. So this, again, may not happen overnight in the same way that we might not see the government issuing guidance. And of course, even government guidance is going to be pinned to legislation. So for example, there's guidance already for the Building Safety Act that speaks to the need for an information management approach. It doesn't specify one, but you need one, and this is the only one in town for most people. So I think there's a lot of implication, but over the coming months and perhaps years, unfortunately, we'll see a lot more of that being baked in to the regulatory and the association membership, as you said.
Okay, all right. Back to Hugh. So what happens with duplicate emails?
Yeah, great question. So it's fairly inevitable that multiple people will be sent the same email. So what our system does is when we're saving it to your end destination, we kind of look at the metadata of the email, not to get too technical, but we can just recognize it's the same. So only keep one copy.
Okay. And do you think firms overlook the importance of email management and just get by unless or until something drastic happens?
Yeah, no, 100%. It normally is kind of people reactively, have been caught out in litigation in the past by not having a key email and kind of losing, when they kind of face litigation, and that's their driving factor to come on board. Obviously, we would like as many companies to be kind of proactive and kind of follow best practice, but yeah, mainly it is kind of a reactive process than proactive. But hopefully, people like Chris and he's kind of talking about the importance of general information management can help drive the message, not just for contracts, drawings, or those, but kind of include email in that phase as well.
Yeah. Okay. Josh says, how do we explore Mail Manager further? Well, obviously, we're going to flag the URL at the end, and or they can Google, etc. But do you want to just answer that briefly?
Yeah, we'd be more than happy to run demonstrations. So where I did kind of a 30-second summary of how the system works, we do kind of a more tailored session, understand how you're working, how you want to work, and then show you how the system could work for yourselves. And then we can even run trials and things of the system as well, so you can use it internally.
And the final question I've got here in the Q&A from Ola Tiju, if I've pronounced your name rightly, hopefully, maybe, but if I haven't, apologies. For Chris, they're effectively asking about, and probably an age-old question that we're used to, in order to conform, meet, comply, enact information management best practice. Does it cost? Is it about investment in systems? Is it you've got to have bigger servers because you're storing more information? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think I spend a lot of time trying to help people look at this in a slightly different way, because the question should not be how much does it cost? The question should be how much does it save? And the case studies I mentioned really clearly demonstrate the savings. And now, admittedly, some of the savings are longer term savings, and therefore you have an investment requirement because you need to pay now, benefit later. But an amazing number of them actually pay back, certainly within a 12-month kind of time frame. So normally within most organizations' budget cycle. So I think that's the real question. And if you're not seeing a financial benefit, as well as all of the other benefits you should get, like productivity, like staying out of jail, like risk management, if you're not seeing a financial saving, then I would suggest you're probably doing it wrong with the wrong people, whether those people are your internal digital experts, whether those people are your supply chain experts, so consultants or software vendors, or whoever it is that's got you where you are. If you're not saving money because of good information management, I would say you're doing it wrong.
Excellent. And on that message, we will end there. So I will share my screen for the final slide. If you bear with me a second, let's get that open. There we go. So this webinar has been recorded, and you can watch it again or share the video with peers and colleagues via the original registration link from tomorrow morning. For more on NIMA, go to wearenima.im. For more on the Information Management Initiative, go to wearenima.im/IMI/. For more idea gen Mail Manager, go to mailmanager.com. Our next webinar is Wednesday, the 28th of November at 11 a.m, Mastering Cost Control in Volatile Times. You can register by going to bit.ly/24 cost control. That's bit.ly/24 cost control. Simply remains for me to say thank you to IdeaGen Mail Manager for supporting this webinar. And thank you very much to Chris and Hugh for their time and input this afternoon. And apologies if there have been any sound issues, but I think we've all broadly understood what the point Chris was trying to get across, especially with that slightly scary triffid behind his left shoulder. So thank you, the two of you, and thank you, the audience, for tuning in. Good afternoon.